You may be interested to read or listen to the audio of my write-up on the Yellow Vests, which deals with the loyalist eviction gangs and their likely source and ultimate purpose. Links in the description. If you're in the Yellow Vests as a leader or activist, you likely have no idea who I am. I'm just an Irishman who likes to antagonize the alt-right, take the piss out of the National Party, and lend constructive criticism to Irish nationalists across the board. Give me a few minutes to turn that attention toward you. What the hell are ye at? You're all over the place. But before I get into why you seem to be all over the place, I'm going to give you a hot tip that will help refine your goals. Demand a return to Brehon law. If you don't know what Brehon law is, please go open a new tab and visit the Brehon Law Academy. Kevin Flanagan is doing amazing work to re-educate people on its ancient and, frankly, superior legal system. He has numerous videos on YouTube and interviews out there to learn the basics and structure for free. Sure, it's exotic. Most people won't have a clue what you're on about, but let's not be victims of our own low expectations. We live in the age of social media, allowing thousands to hear about and learn about Brehon law in the matter of hours. Why Brehon law? So we don't have to go reinventing the wheel with this citizens-initiated referenda nonsense that's only being tested out in failed countries in South America. Because it's our ancient birthright, and by no means outdated by our modern world. People will be genuinely excited by the notion of returning to their roots. The legal system, which we adopted from England after we supposedly gained independence from them, is not fit for our purposes. It's riddled with precedences that harm us. Brehon law can stand as an alternative system running alongside common law in a transitory period that will give Irish people the option of accessing justice, protecting us from the old boys club of world government and transnational corporations, allowing us to repossess our homes, our natural resources, and our local governments. It won't even be that big of a change in how we already do things, as our common law has Brehon vestiges left over in it. All we're missing are the Brehons themselves. Now let's talk about your list of demands, most of which I applaud you on. We demand citizens-initiated referenda, immediate halt on all evictions and cameras allowed in all civil courts. Leo Varadkar, declare a general election and resign. Cervical cancer HSE staff responsible fired, and Simon Harris resign. Constitutional protection of Ireland's water from privatisation. Medical cannabis legalised immediately. Prohibition on TDs from being housing landlords or beneficiaries. Return Ireland's oil and gas reserves to public ownership. An effective means to remove corrupt Gardaí, civil servants and judges. Immediate distribution of food, fuel vouchers for people going hungry and cold. Cap rent per bedroom to £400 per month, €400 per month. Abolishment of the TV licence. Enforce full corporate tax rate on multinationals and collect revenues owed. A raise in minimum wage to actual living costs. Abolish household charge and property tax. I figured the full list was important to read out to spread the message. I could pick holes in 3 or 4 of those demands, but something else bothers me even more. Why no mention of immigration? When Yellow Vest Ireland started, it was declared that everyone was welcome with all of their concerns and that the movement was neither left nor right or anything else in particular but for the people. You then ask the people on your Facebook group to tell you what issues concern them and should go onto a list of demands. On almost every post that vaguely touched on the subject, countless people following you said that immigration and demographic replacement mattered to them. We said it over and over again, yet it isn't in this list. What gives? When you staged your first demonstration in Dublin on Saturday, December 15th, the genius behind the group stepped forward publicly. From reports of his friends and Yellow Vest supporters, People Before Profit accused him of being a neo-Nazi, and by all accounts this man is nowhere near the far right. These Marxist Trotskyist shills are just opportunists who would call a 3-year-old a Nazi if it served their narrative. So it looks to me like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Demand the end of the direct provision centre scam and demographic replacement, get called Nazis. Don't demand the end of the direct provision centre scam and demographic replacement, get called Nazis. So why not satisfy a real concern and alienate a huge contingent of politically aware and active Irish people? May I suggest that perhaps this is a deliberate decision? As a side note, I also see nothing in here about the EU, another concern many of your 7,000 so-called members have. Let's talk immigration. I've covered this somewhat in my articles and on my channel, but it's also been covered extensively by countless others as well. But let's just have a rundown on what the problem actually is, without having to employ racism or bigotry. In 2005, then president of Dublin City University said that Irish people will be a minority in their own country by 2050, and that this is a good thing because the country will need more workers, reducing the identity of the Irish and our country down to money and demographics, a mentality I thought the Yellow Vests would want to rescue us from, given that it's this mentality which has ruined the place. Up until around the end of the century, Ireland had a very small immigrant population. In under 20 years, the face of the country has changed dramatically, with roughly 20% of our population today being non-Irish. This needs to be recognised as both a change and a massive change for a society to undergo in a short period. Then an individual must take it upon themselves to decide what that change entails and whether they're comfortable with it, as well as the future projections of an Irish minority within another 20 years. Many of us already have gone through this process, and we've decided, for a number of reasons, we're not happy with it. It also needs to be recognised that this demographic shift is not organic. We all agree our establishment is corrupt. Well, these wank bags have been incentivizing the demographic shift all along. Think about it. Why would anyone come here willingly? Because they love Ireland and Irish culture? Because they enjoy the rain and the freakish weather patterns hammering us from the Atlantic every year? Something's not right when a considerable number of our own children migrate for better lives elsewhere, yet people from all around the world are migrating here. Supposedly we're importing doctors and engineers, yet our native doctors and engineers can't build a life here. Now consider the Project Ireland 2040, which claims that our population will increase by a quarter within the next 20 years. That's from 4.7 million by about another million. A huge population boost, which will make every other city in the country just about as annoying to live in and commute through as Dublin is today. It's huge and unnatural. The project concerns itself with building the infrastructure necessary to host that 25% population boom. And aren't they doing a fantastic job so far? Not a homeless person to be seen, and everyone receives medical care within a reasonable time, and crime is plummeting, right? Reckon we're ready for this, folks? The project explicitly informs us that a large portion of this population increase will come from immigration. This doesn't bode well for the 80% of us that are left, given the last spate of economically driven migration has left us with only 40% of our young people. According to the Central Statistics Office, between the years 2011 and 2016, so-called white Irish only grew by 0.2%, with the greatest population growth being other, including mixed background, whatever the fuck that means, at 11.6%. Every other ethnic group rose several fold more than the indigenous Irish have, except for the African population, which has dropped by 0.3%, possibly because they had the same common sense as our children and left for more prosperous lands. Given the EU and UN's fetish for immigration from the third world into the first, I think we natives will be an ethnic minority in our own country way before 2050. Again, this is change. This is dramatic change. What does it mean? What are the results of that change? Can we handle it?